every entrepreneur I talk to in the early stages, it's just like you need at bats to be able to see pitches. That's how it is. And so you got to get to the plate as many times as you can. Pitch your friends, pitch your family, pitch your neighbors, pitch literally everybody, because that helps you get your pitch down. It helps you understand what your audience cares for, and then you get introductions.
Welcome to Fundraising Demystified, the podcast where we uncover the untold stories of successful founders who have raised venture capital to bring their visions to life. Join me, Jason Kirby, your host, as we dive into the hidden truths of the fundraising game. We'll explore different strategies, tactics, lessons learned from these entrepreneurs who have figured out how to win the fundraising game in their own way. Whether you're a budding entrepreneur, just getting started, or an established founder looking to scale your business, this podcast equips you with the knowledge and inspiration to conquer the fundraising landscape. Welcome to episode 4 of Fundraising Demystified. I'm Jason Kirby, your host, and today we have Daniel Goldstein, co-founder and COO of Trust and Will, the TurboTax for estate planning. We're going to talk about his humble beginnings, raising capital in San Diego, to how they went on to raise over $45 million from VCs and institutional investors. Daniel and I will reminisce over the San Diego venture scene and how it's evolved over the last decade. And Daniel was kind enough to basically open up his book, tell us what his numbers were at the various different stages of their capital raise, how many investors they ended up pitching in order to succeed in raising the subsequent rounds over a period of time, and how it got easier and easier after each round, and they continue to have great velocity and growth and success as a company. This is one of my favorite sessions yet, and I can't wait for you to listen. Let's jump in. Hey everyone, this is Jason Kirby with Fundraising Demystified, and I have Daniel Goldstein joining us, CEO and co-founder of Trust and Will. Welcome, Daniel.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me.
No, we're excited to have you, and to give you the audience some background and some color on what your background and the history of Trust and Will. Can you kind of just share a little bit of the story?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So at Trust and Will, we're building what you'd imagine as the TurboTax for estate planning, right? We set out 6 years ago to make estate planning accessible and affordable for every person in this country. And my background personally was in custom software development and strategy and business development. And as I was going through life stages, along with my co-founders, we were going through life stages. We realized that there was no company in the space that we felt like we trusted, that appealed to our demographic. And then also, we were looking at the marketplace and we were like, I wouldn't use really anything out there. And so we started Trust and Will. We wanted it to be affordable and accessible for everybody. And we've been doing it for 6 years, have about 500,000 families that we've helped so far. And our mission is to help every family leave their legacy.
No, it's a great story, and something I wanted to kind of unpack a little bit is just the fact that you guys were founded in San Diego, correct?
Yep.
And so in that journey, I'm originally from San Diego. I went and raised capital in San Diego, and it's kind of considered a tier 2 market when it comes to venture capital. What was it like kind of starting the company in San Diego? Why'd you choose San Diego? And kind of share that story.
For sure. So I'm originally from Chicago. I moved to San Diego to take a job in custom software development. And so when I got there, I would say the tech ecosystem was in its early days. I moved in 2015. We ended up starting Trust and Will in 2017. And we had made community in San Diego. And let me tell you, San Diego has been amazing to us. Absolutely. We talk about a city that has surrounded us. From the very beginning of the company, we started the company from a pitch competition put on by San Diego Venture Group, okay? That catapulted us into introductions to investors in town, into Techstars. The Techstars managing director for Techstars Anywhere was at the pitch event. His name's Ryan Cooter. He saw us at the pitch event. He's a San Diegan, and he said, hey, you should apply to Techstars. We're like, okay. So then we went through Techstars. And as we went through it, we raised money through San Diego Angels. They surrounded us. But I will say, this was the early days of San Diego tech. Now you have a ton of unicorns in San Diego. You have some amazing entrepreneurs who are building huge companies that are changing the world. And we were really lucky to be right on that upswing of when people were starting to look. Investors from LA, San Francisco, New York, they're all starting to look at how do we get out of the Bay Area? How do we get out of the major markets? How do we get different valuation structures? And so there was a lot of attention down in markets like San Diego and other markets too. Denver was getting a ton of attention. Austin is getting a ton of attention. Even if you look across the US, you had places like Chicago and Columbus, other places that are getting a ton of attention. So anyway, San Diego has been amazing to us. We are so grateful to be a San Diego company. We still are. We're fully remote, but the majority of our team is still in San Diego, and we consider it home.
No, that's great, and it's great to hear because when I was there back in 2010 to 2014 raising money, it just was just the ecosystem wasn't ripe enough to support a
Yeah.
lot of founders coming in. That's hence why I'm here in New York. But so you kind of mentioned that you guys got your start with Techstars, and well, the San Diego venture community got the idea rolling, got some introductions, started making things happen. Did you guys have a product before you got momentum on that front?
No. So when we entered the pitch competition we entered in August of 2017. All we had was a pitch deck and an idea that Cody and I had been rumbling on. Cody, my co-founder, we had been basically like whiteboarding what the future of the entire industry could look like based on what we've seen in software. And we were just blown away that this hadn't been done at a level that we thought, which is like an industry leading brand at scale that people recognize immediately, like they recognize TurboTax. Okay. And so we only had a pitch deck and we had an idea and we had assembled a small team and we knew we were going to run fast after a big problem. And we had started to raise cash. And so we had started to move that direction, but we didn't have a product until we were like exiting Techstars. And so we were building our first version of our basically will based. It was just it was an easy way to make a will online. And we built that from basically like November through April, and we went through Techstars in January through April.
Oh, that's great. And so basically, what it sounds like is you really kind of tapped into a market that was just massive opportunity, not a lot of attention or major brands addressing it. Like for me, with my trust and will, it's going to a lawyer, paying thousands of dollars, lots of paperwork back and forth, and being on your site, it's like more of like filling out forms and just like going through a UI experience that's more tailored to all the
Yep.
different possible cases. So it's very intuitive and more accessible, for a lot more people that just want to have a safe way to make sure that they're taken care of after an unfortunate event, might happen. And going through the fundraising experience, so you guys graduate Techstars, you get the product to market. Kind of what was the growth from there? Like kind of from both product, customers to raising the next round.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the benefits that we have as a company is that our the problem that we're solving is very easy to understand. Like when we tell people that we're making estate planning easy, they're like, oh yeah, that should be easy, right? They think of an attorney, they think of an office, they think of expensive, they think of inaccessible. And so from the start, that's one of the reasons that I think that we could get going in Techstars and that we could get going with investors really easily, because we could say, hey, we're making estate planning, wills, trusts online easy. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Then the next questions that were on their mind was always like, well, what's your go-to-market and what's your pricing strategy? And how do you know you're going to be able to acquire customers? And what about, willing.com and Tomorrow and Free Will and like these other people who were trying and had raised cash in a similar area. So then it wasn't like we had to explain the problem. I find oftentimes in the early stages of I work with and alongside a ton of entrepreneurs, and especially through our Techstars community and the local community in San Diego and Dallas. And like the problem, if I got to struggle to understand the problem, it's gonna be hard for me to be an investor in your company. And so our problem was really easy. The solution was pretty direct. And so then we got to the mechanics of like how we build the business. And so, you're asking about what did it look like? So we raised $500,000 as we were going through Techstars, including the Techstars money that they kick in for the accelerator. We raised like half of that going into Techstars, then Techstars kicks in. I think it's 150,000. If you want, it's like optional. There's, you give them equity as part of the Techstars program, and then there's an optional note that you can take cash on a note. And we took it, and then we raised $500,000, and that was through pitching. I think we pitched like 160 angels throughout the course of a 6-month period of time. Okay. And so then we had $500,000, and $500,000 doesn't get a company very far, as everybody knows. Right. And so especially a company that like just launched products. So we launched a product in April, And it was our first will-based estate plan. I remember when our first will customer came in. It was right in May. It was the first person we didn't know. Okay. And we still have a photo of like that person's will. I won't share the name, but like we still have a photo of that person's will because we're like, this is the first one of like we didn't know. We had a lot of friends and family that went through it. And so our goal in the first round is to prove our concept. That's it. You got $500,000 to prove that you can go out and get somebody to buy your product that hasn't bought that you don't know. And in our business, it's a direct to consumer. So you have to prove that one of your direct to consumer channels works. And so as we started to scale some of our direct to consumer channels, we were on all the like kind of easy ones to start off with. We were advertising on Facebook. We were running a couple like small partnerships, and we were trying to prove who is our target demographic. And what we realized is that moms from the age of basically like 35 to 55 who have kids in the home are the primary drivers of estate planning activity. They just are. Dads get involved because they have to get involved. And there are definitely dads out there that get involved, like, even if they aren't forced to. But what we found is that almost every mom has an experience where they wake up in the middle of the night after they have their first kid, and they look over at their husband, and maybe you had this experience with your 18-month-old, and your spouse says to you, "What happens if we die?" Never thought about that. As a guy, never thought about it. I'm in estate planning. I still never woke up and did that. And so that first $500,000 was figure out who are you selling to? Who's your ideal customer profile? Figure out if you have product market fit, okay? And then figure out a little bit of scaling channels. So then we raised $1.5 million. So we raised like the $500,000. We closed that in like April. And then we just extended the note. It wasn't like we did like the first one was like on a $4 million a note, right? Like on a cap. We just extended that to 6. Like it's like we didn't even do that much more, and we raised $1.5 million then, okay? And so to get the $1.5 million, we had to pitch. I think we pitched around 70 investors to get the $1.5 million, and all we needed was one lead. And we did that over the course of the summer, and we were showing them our metrics, our products in market, like all of these like early things. But really, they're still betting on us. They're betting on our ability to do it. And so like revenue wise, like I don't even remember what revenue we were doing. I think in our first year we did like in 2018 we did a little less than $1 million in revenue. And so we didn't hit like $1 million run rate or anything like that, like until 2019. And when we raised our Series A the next year, and we had hit $1 million run rate, and we're like, we're $1 million run rate. Look at the traction we've done over the last year. We've shipped a will-based plan. We shipped a trust-based plan. Here's our ideal customer profile. Here's what our CAC looks like. Here's what our LTV, kind of looks like. And so that's by the time we got to Series A, we had a little bit of data behind it, but that's what the seed capital was for. I think of angel to figure out your proof of concept and your like go to market. Then you want to bet on that. So you raise a little more money. Now you're betting on that, seeing if those hypotheses work. And then if those hypotheses work, your Series A is to accelerate everything you're doing.
No, and that's 100% accurate in terms of that you follow the steps exactly as, what most venture backable companies that have momentum, that have kind of figured out the product market fit aspect and executed across that. And especially as you mentioned, like, okay, you raise the seed to kind of get to that $1 million runway, which is that kind of arbitrary magical number that kind of triggers for a Series A raise. But you're smart in the sense of like, you got all your stats together. And I think that's a lot of things that founders don't realize. When you're Series A ready, like, you got to have your numbers. Like, you're now looking at growth. Yeah. You got to be able to say, like, you give me $1, I make $5, and be able to kind of have that calculation very easy for VCs to be able to calculate on their own. And then, so you raised the Series A, which correct me again, how much you guys raised on the Series A?
$6 million. So small in like New York or San Francisco at the time, that would be considered like it would be considered like almost like a seed round, because this is 2019 when we did our Series A. And so like we were calling it a Series A, and people in like or major markets are like, that's cute.
And what's funny is like, I remember that because like, I'm still involved like the alumni community in San Diego State, and I saw the news coming through, like everyone's celebrating that you guys raised a Series A. I'm seeing all these articles and people I follow sharing it, and Yeah, it's funny because like there's a million deals happening in New York, million deals happening in San Francisco, and they just kind of become noise.
Yep.
But for you guys, it stood out because there's just not there weren't a lot of San Diego based companies coming out and getting to a Series A point. Nonetheless, to where you guys are now, where you guys I think you have raised a total of 38. So kind of walk me through.
48.
It's 48. Nice. Okay. Um,
Yep.
so kind of walk me through the rest of the kind of journey and share what you can on that front when it comes to kind of getting to that 48 million number.
Yeah. So Series A, we had a firm called Link Ventures out of Boston who led our Series A. They're an amazing data-driven VC fund that's connected to it's connected to MIT in a lot of ways, but they're connected to specifically they have like a data science lab called Kogo Labs, which is an accelerator for all consumer brands. They have just a massive data warehouse. So we loved them. We love their data-driven approach. We accelerated a lot of our consumer marketing by, I would say it saved us about 14 to 15 months just by working with their data science team, which in the early days, saving like 12 to 15 months is unbelievable. Also, a lot of money, right? Like that's 12 to 15 months of like spending on ads to learn the same thing. So then COVID hit. We raised our Series A, and then like 5 months later, COVID hit, and our business tripled in 30 days. And so we went from I think we were doing about 100 grand a month, 100 to 120 grand a month in January of 2020, and then we hit March of 2020, and we tripled. So we did about 350 in March. Okay, and this is like, so all of a sudden the entire world is focused on debt, and they can't go to attorneys, and we have a product that's easy, accessible online. We did a lot of things during COVID. Yeah, so like we were kind of perfectly positioned in that market to help a lot of families. And specifically, we also provided free estate plans for all frontline workers. We did it for teachers. We gave away over 12,000 estate plans to any of the first responders and frontline workers, just to give a little bit of peace of mind for the job that they were showing up as every day. And so during that time, I also had my first kid. So it was a whirlwind for me. And so that kind of accelerated us into conversations that summer to raise another round. And people saw like, hey, look, actually, we do believe that there's going to be a brand here that wins. And we think that brand could be you. And we think that like the convergence of digital with online, and look, now you have everybody's default was online during COVID, right? Every single tech stock was exploding. And so then we started talking to people in the summertime about a Series B, which we were like, I don't know if we don't really, do we have the metrics for it? I don't know if we have the metrics for it. And so I think we pitched like 20 or 25 firms in the course of like a week and a half. We're like, you know what, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. We're going to condense all of the pitches into like 1 week, and we're going to do it. So we had been talking with Jackson Square Ventures for, I think we had known Victor, who led the round, for 2 years at that point. Like he had been coming down to San Diego, and he was one of the SF venture VCs that had been like looking at San Diego, and specifically because Mike Kren from San Diego Venture Group had really nurtured relationships with all of these like off-market VCs that, this is like why we benefited massively from San Diego, because we got a lot of attention as one of these startups. So Victor had been following us for a while, loved what we were doing, believed in our thesis, believed in our go-to-market, and led our Series B. And again, small Series B, 15 million, right? And so 15 million Series B, that was in 2020. From 2020 to 21 to 22, we just continued to double or more than double our business every single year. And so doing our Series B extension in 2021, we raised 10 million from UBS, and a few others kind of like contributed in. But UBS, we didn't go out and find that. They came to us and said, we really love what you're doing. We believe in your thesis. We'd like to invest. So we extended our Series B. And then in 2022, technically we closed it this year, but we also had the same inbound from a few organizations. Like Northwestern Mutual was already on our cap table. We had USAA, Amex, and SCI, who, I got to call out, like Cody, my co-founder, is, I think, the greatest fundraiser of all time, right? He drives all of these conversations. I come in after they're warm and teed up and talk about and brag about the work that our team is doing. And so Cody nurtures these relationships. So when I say inbound, it's inbound because the relationship has been nurtured over a long period of time. And so we raised another 15 million from Northwestern Mutual, SEI, USA, Amex that closed in January of this year. And so, but those conversations started last May. So that's how it all adds up. 500 million and a half, 6 million, 15 million, 10 million, 15 million. And like the last 25 that we raised was easier than the first 500.
Yeah, no, and there's a couple things I want to point out for our listeners here of like things that you kind of mentioned. Like, number one, I want to go back to Link Ventures from Boston, like choosing the right partner. And that's something that I think a lot of founders just like, all right, who's ever going to give me money? I'll take it, kind of mindset. But when it comes to this firm that you mentioned, like they brought immense value to the table. This was not just a check and a babysitter. This was like massive value add in terms of accelerating your growth. And that's something that I think founders need to look for when you're building your business is don't just go for money, go for who you're gonna be in bed with for the next 10 years potentially, and establish that kind of relationship. Make sure there's value on both sides, and that's a rare case. Not most VCs have that kind of value to bring to the table, so that's amazing to kind of hear that you got that. And the other thing, as you mentioned with Cody, like establishing those relationships, because again, it sounds like with that 1 week when you raise a series, you raise a Series B in a week, like, that's pretty impressive. And it was on a whim, and, granted it was the peak of the market. So, people can argue that, it was easier in that time frame because just money was flying like crazy. And you had the perfect fit, kind of the digital online platform when everything was, going online and there's cash flowing everywhere. But, it sounds like you were still very strategic. Like you tested the markets just to kind of see what was out there. You didn't want to like do the whole campaign. And maybe let me ask you: if you didn't get term sheets, were you guys just gonna like get back to building, or were you guys gonna try to hit the road again on the fundraise?
For which round?
The Series B.
Yeah, we would have had to keep fundraising. Like it was like we had gotten to the point where we believed we were going to raise, and we had been building our company up to the point where that assumption was true. And so if we hadn't raised our Series B, we would have had to go back to our strategic drawing board or go figure out a fundraise, because ramping up into it, our business was accelerating so fast that we along with the rest of the market, right, like favored growth over anything else. And so we had a cash out date. And so when we raised our B, I think our cash out date was still 12 months away, 12-ish months away. And so it wasn't like urgent at that moment in time, but we're like, well, when are we going to raise next? If we don't raise in that fall, we can't really raise in Q4. Nobody raises in Q4. And then you got to raise in Q1, right? And so that cash out date gets a lot closer. And as cash out date gets a lot closer, your negotiation with investors gets different. It changes. That's just how it is. Like when you need money, it's hard to raise it. When you don't need it, it's easy to find. And so going back to what you said about the Series A investor. So we, during the Series A pitch, again, like a Series A pitch was harder than the Series B pitch. Like our metrics, nothing is ever where people want it to be. And no matter what your business does, you take a curve, and there's going to be businesses that everybody's going to invest in. No brainer. The metrics, the growth, the team, everything is exploding. Okay. Most businesses fall within this 2/3 majority curve, right? Where it's like, there's great things about it, and there's ugly things about it. And you have to figure out, I think a lot of investors are figuring out, theoretically, does this align with where they think the market is headed? Do they believe in the thesis of the organization? And that's what they're betting at the Series A, because you have some metrics, you have an LTV to CAC, but again, your LTV to CAC at that early stage is early. Like, who knows if that can scale? Like, who knows if like $1 million to $5 million business can scale an LTV to CAC to a $500 million business? Like, so you have to believe that there's something that's happening that's more magical than just the numbers that are there. And so in the Series A, picking the right partner was huge. Like Rob from Link Ventures is still on our board, right? So this is 3 years later, and he's been an incredible ally for us. Kogo Labs has been an incredible ally for us, and so you got to be careful with that. And so we had three term sheets for our Series A. We ended up picking Link. I think we picked an amazing partner, and we're incredibly grateful for them.
No, and I'm glad you kind of got honest there and kind of said like you guys had a good growth trajectory. You were like a solid opportunity, but you weren't like growing 500% month over month. Anything like that. Would be a slam dunk type deal. And you guys still pitch a lot of investors, but I think still the outcome
Yep.
shows that getting a couple term sheets kind of shows that you've done something right. You built a good model and a good market, and you're showing up. That you have the right data that it's worth a bet. And then you brought up some really key things that I think a lot of founders don't understand. Of like, they look at benchmarks online, like like a 3-to-1 CAC ratio is really good. LTV to CAC ratio. But then what they don't realize is VCs have also seen that a million times, but they also see how it plays out over time and how those sometimes aren't sustainable. Especially as things get more competitive, markets kind of shrink a little bit, your target audience, you got to find ways to expand and you have to get more aggressive with spend. And they think that, the more you scale, the cheaper things get, and that's not always the case. And so VCs always have that lens when looking at numbers. And I always try to remind founders, like, okay, this might look good, but you've spent 50 grand proving this, not tens of millions.
Right.
And
Our acquisition numbers in the early days, we were like, VCs, you got to check this out. You got to check out our acquisition numbers. Like, look what we spent on Facebook. We spent $2,000 and we're getting registration for like $9. Like, we got to do this. Like, that $2,000 doesn't. That's not it. Like, yes, we were targeting the most relevant customer and getting in front of them, and that's not how markets are built. It's like not everybody is like literally about to buy an estate plan. That's just not how it is.
it's not always top of mind, and then there's nurturing and building. It's like it's an entire life cycle of managing that customer's
Exactly.
experience. And I'm glad you mentioned that because again, like founders are like, oh yeah, the $2,000 number. It's just like to you as a founder, it means so much. Like it's such an accomplishment. But when VCs see 100 of those a week, it's just like it's a different scale that founders have to kind of reflect on and put themselves in their shoes to kind of acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Don't be offended when they say no, just because they've seen it not work out many times.
But those stats are important in the early. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to spending 200 grand a month or $2 million a month before you spend $2,000 a month. That's just how it is. So, and if you're not spending the 2,000 well, you're probably not going to spend 20,000 well. You're probably not going to spend 200,000 well. Like you have to work through the hoops of building a business. And so, and that's what these stages are all for. These stages of capital. They're stages of your business that you're building, and every one has its own complexities and functions that you're going to wrestle with.
No, brilliant said. I love that. So, something that I recognize is like the opportunity of Trust and Wells was very clear because again, wealthier people who have prioritized it, they have assets to distribute, who you're raising capital from that have that experience, and albeit you're potentially solving that problem for them, but you're also bringing it to the masses. Like, how did you guys kind of like scale up the market? Because like current spend on Trust and Wells versus what at least my assumption, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're essentially expanding the market. You're making it more accessible for more people across the country. How did you kind of like come up with the market opportunity?
Yeah. The market opportunity, I think, is one of the most overlooked functions of the industry that we're playing in. And it is the reason that we have, in our opinion, such a head start because we believed in it prior to a lot of VCs, prior to a lot of market participants. And I, so here's the thing. People make assumptions about when people do estate planning, and they're oftentimes wrong. And if you go out and you survey people and you ask, when did you do your first estate plan? What you'll find is when they had kids. And what people think about is people doing estate planning when they're old. And so there's a gap. There's a gap in consumer understanding that in our research in the very early days of Trust and Will, we identified from our own experience. We were going through life events, getting married, having kids, and saying, wait, it seems like we would need an estate plan. Then we started talking to our friends and our family members who are going through life stages that are similar, and it's on their mind, all of them. It's like life insurance. They're like, oh, it's an adulting function. Do I need to do it? And so you're looking at, there's 40 million families in this country that have minor kids in their home right now. Okay. And so you're looking at the 40 million and you're like, that's part of the target market. Then you look at it, there's 90 million Americans who say that they know they need an estate plan, but they haven't gotten around to doing it. Then there's another 100 million Americans who have an estate plan sitting, like mine is right here, in their drawer somewhere. It's not digital. Mine comes from Trust and Will, so it's digital, but then we have to finish it offline, right? And so the market is massive. There is like somewhere between 6 to 8 million people who are doing a net new estate plan every single year, regardless of whether there's advertisements or anything online. They're going to find an attorney, they're going to go online, they're going to do it, okay? And 85% of those people still go to attorneys. That's just how it is. So the market that you're talking about expanding is we're expanding the online market. We don't even need to expand the estate planning market. We just need like as we continue to capture more of the market, we're continuing to capture more of the market that would go to usually an expensive provider, and the experience is subpar, right? Like the experience of doing an estate plan online with your spouse over a glass of wine while you watch Succession is a lot better than trying to arrange childcare so that you can go to a law office in the middle of your workday. Like it just, the logistics don't make sense. So the market is huge, and I think it's understated oftentimes because the go-to-market is hard, because customer acquisition costs in our market is hard. It is very hard. You're dealing with procrastinating parents like yourself who may or may not have set up their estate plan yet because they may or may not be tired because they have an 18-month at home and they're trying to run a business and they're living in New York. Like there are complexities to life that prevent people from doing this that we have removed all the barriers for. So then the next step is like, how do you tap into that? And our primary hypothesis has been to build an industry-leading brand that people trust, recognize, and identify with in the same way that TurboTax did it for tax. TurboTax has 40% of the tax market, 45% of the tax market, right? And so what does 45% of this industry look like? Because we believe there's going to be one winner, and who takes the majority. So what does 45% of our market looks like? It looks like probably 30 to 40 million families who have used one platform to create their estate plan. They manage it through there. And then when they or one of their loved ones passes away, they distribute it directly through our platform. So like that's what we're building. And we believe that like 30 to 40 million is the 30% of market mark, because we know that there's 100 million people in this country with estate plans.
No, that's well said. And I think that's something that I want founders kind of understand is like how to articulate your market, because that was not my impression. I was in the impression that a lot of people don't do this, and the fact that there's 100 million that already do is it was pretty mind opening to me. So that's something that I think it's the founder's job to be able to articulate the real opportunity and really understand who they're going after to be able to convince VCs, because that makes you venture backable or not venture backable. If you can't articulate that, billion-dollar unicorn potential and make it believable. It's one thing for you to believe it, but you got to make other people believe it. And if you can't do that, then, in that case, it's going to be very difficult to raise capital, just because the way power law works and how venture capitalists work, they just need to see that 10, 100x, type potential returns. So you gave us kind of the whole story of the fundraise, and really appreciate that. And you kind of got into some of the insights. Some things were more difficult than others. What was kind of like a standout moment in your fundraise, both a kind of like a low and a high, during the raise?
One story specifically comes to mind. The $1.5 million, really early company. I mean, we had 7 employees. We're working out of a co-working space. We basically were all in the same room. The room smelled. It smelled like takeout and food trucks and then 7 people in a room. And we were raising this $1.5 million, and nobody wanted to invest without a lead. And this is a common problem in early stage where they say, yeah, sure, I'll invest. Just find a lead. I don't want to have to set the terms. And Cody and I were wrestling with this. We're like, what do we do here? Like we have more than $2.5 million of people who say they want to invest, but nobody wants to invest without a lead. So what are we supposed to do? Well, we finally ended up setting the terms with one of the VCs that was not going to be the largest check, but they were willing to set the terms. Okay. And we had flown out to San Francisco to pitch WTI, Western Technology, which typically does debt financing. And I always remember this. And well, first off, because I had curry the night before, and so my stomach was like not in a good spot. Okay, we fly to San Francisco. That's probably TMI for your listeners, but it's just real life, right? We fly to San Francisco on the first flight out, and it's our first like major pitch in front of a big firm with all of the partners. And we get there, and we're nervous. Cody's hyped, and we do our pitch, and I maybe one of the guys is going to listen to it, but one of the guys next to me in that pitch, no joke, fell asleep. Not kidding. Like, fell asleep, and look, like, the firm is amazing. They've been so supportive of us, and maybe he was just very focused, but I swear he was asleep. And I'm like, we've bombed this. Like, there's no way that this is going well. I feel mortified, like there's a lot of doubt that comes in as a founder, especially like, I shouldn't be here. I'm not a real entrepreneur, like all of these things. Okay. We get walked out. John Beiser is our contact there, and he's been fantastic and supportive since we started. And so he's like, guys, one of the best pitches I've ever seen. Like, you guys crushed it. You did amazing. And I'm like, there's no way. Like, I was here in the room. Like, I saw it. There's no way that it went well. He's like, I promise you, it went so well. So he walks us out, and we didn't have a car. We're not from there. So we sit and we're like waiting for an Uber. Uber says it's like 8 minutes away. We're like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. We're sitting with our backpacks outside this. Like, I mean, WTI, like, they gave venture debt to Facebook. They were like a behemoth in the industry. Like, and we're just a bunch of kids like trying to raise for like a estate planning startup. And John, and so we're nervous, we're feeling bad, we're just sitting there, and John comes back out and he's like, hey, how much is left in this round? And we had $500,000 left, and we're like, hey, $500,000. And he's like, okay, great, we'll take the rest of it, and we'll send you the paperwork by end of day today. And we're like, we're having a moment where we feel so fake, right? But also we're like, act like you've been here before. Yeah, sweet, like, yes, like, thank you, John, like, we'd welcome you on this journey with us. But in the inside, we're exploding, right? But then, so when we sit there, John goes back inside, but we're like, there's all windows on their office, and we're sitting with our backpacks. We're like, what do we do? What do we do with our hands? Like, I don't even know. And we have to wait another 6 minutes for our Uber to get there. So we're just waiting. And finally we get in the Uber, and we're like, wait for it. And we like pull out of the driveway and like back onto one of the roads in Silicon Valley, and we're like, yes. And it was so exciting. So that was like kind of like a low to high. Like, I was feeling terrible in the morning. I was feeling terrible during the pitch. And I one of the things with being an entrepreneur that I've said, and this is just a life thing, is like, the more you show up, the luckier you get. It's how it is. And I think fundraising is like that. Like, you have to show up. You have to give it your best. You have to continue to grind. And you know what? The more you do that, it's a numbers game, the luckier you're going to get. Like, we have a list of investors that we pitched that's almost 550 people long. Okay. We're not talking, we haven't been around that long. Like, we're a 6-year-old business, right? We send out monthly investor updates on the 1st or 2nd of every single month since we started the business to almost 600 people now. Okay, so basically any investor that we've ever talked to, we say, hey, do you want to be on our investor updates? We'd love to keep you informed with what we're doing in the business. And this is a secret weapon for us. Like, everybody should do this. This is a Techstars thing. They told us to do this. We didn't invent this ourselves. And so anyways, the journey's been amazing, but that was one of the early moments where I was like, this is a crazy ride, because it was high to low.
No, that's brilliant. I bet you wanted to kind of do the 80s high five, jump in the air. But,
but you could have had a comic book moment.
Yeah, the glass, they're all probably looking at you like, what are they doing? You're just like that pressure of just like, oh, I want to get out of here. But I totally know.
In real life, nobody cared. They're all back in their office. They're probably not even thinking about the pitch anymore, because it's one of many pitches. Just in our world, we're like so self-conscious because we think everybody obviously is thinking about us. Yeah. When the reality is, like, nobody's thinking about you.
Yeah, $500K to them is like pocket change, like, it's not a huge investment. It's like, hey, we like these guys, let's take a bet, it's like, all right, back to work. but it
Yeah,
changed your life.
exactly.
It gives you this massive window of opportunity, and it's like this massive success moment.
Yep.
And it's just you and Cody as the founders, correct?
And Brian Lamb,
Oh,
he's
Brian.
our third co-founder as well. Yep.
Um, and so, I really appreciate you kind of, sharing this story and kind of sharing the background on, both Trust and Will and kind of your fundraising history with our audience. Like if you could, leave any, nugget of information for a founder looking to raise their seed round or their pre-seed round, what would be your advice to them?
Yeah, it's a numbers game. And so whatever number of investors you think you pitched that you think is enough, double it, triple it, and then go back to the drawing board. So uh, that's it. Like every entrepreneur I talk to in the early stages, it's just like you need at bats to be able to see pitches. That's how it is. And so you got to get to the plate as many times as you can. Pitch your friends, pitch your family, pitch your neighbors, pitch literally everybody, because that helps you get your pitch down. It helps you understand what your audience cares for, and then you get introductions. So you pitch and then ask for intros, pitch and ask for intros, and you just do that until your web is big enough. So, and just for context, like we hadn't sold a company, we didn't have a venture network. Like we had to build everything from scratch, and so it was a lot of grinding and a lot of pitching.
No, yeah, it sounds like it. And then, when it comes to, the numbers game, like how much did you guys iterate? From the deck, did you have like deck version 45, kind of?
Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, you have to. I mean, like, and we would pitch it. We from pitch to pitch. Sometimes we would change it, and then sometimes we wouldn't change it for 2 weeks. It just there's some things that you find a groove on, and then sometimes you're like, this groove just isn't working, and you got to stay nimble. But like, you also don't want to. I know this problem with advice is that it always comes with contradictions. Like you have to know what the core of the business is, and you can't change the core. So yeah, you can change how your go to market strategy is communicated, or you can change how your product is communicated. You can tell better stories. So much is storytelling. So like, and that's why like getting at bats is really important, because it hones your story more than anything. You don't want to be changing your business in every pitch. That's not going to work very well.
No, I would agree with that. And then, how did you guys go about finding investors? And what was your first, initial outreach to kind of get those, that 600 people list, investor list? How did you go about kind of getting those first initial meetings?
Uh, Shameless reach out. I mean, Cody is like shameless when it comes to reaching out. I mean, like, look, we started with people we knew, anybody who had money. We just thought, hey, who do we know that has money, and who do we know that's in San Diego that has money, and what about other founders in San Diego that have had recent exits? Like, how do you think? Like, who in the world has money? That's what it all comes down to in the early stage. And we just reached out to every single one of those people, and then asked them for other people that have money, and then did cold reach out on LinkedIn and cold emails, and like connected with venture groups and angel groups, and like looked at websites of lists of investors and lists of firms. And it's I don't know what's the answer for everything. Like, yeah, we didn't start with a list of 600, right? Like it started with one, and then we talked to somebody and it became two, and then we talked to 10 people, it became 11. Like it just all of those are conversations that happen over time, and then what happens is you start to build a network, and that network takes a lot of time to build. It takes time to build relationships. As you start to pitch in your seed round, we were pitching Series A investors, and they're like, you're too early. But then we kept in contact with them. And as we were in our A, we were pitching Series B investors. And every single stage that we've gotten to, it's been easier to get a hold of people, um, because our network's grown, and then our business has had more traction.
Yeah.
So
And at the end of the day, like I guess that's always the key: have a great business, and focus on building a great business, and things will. I think a lot of founders might be working on something that they haven't really found their click yet, and they go out to raise, and that can often be detrimental to their growth of chasing money when they're not necessarily ready. But
maybe, who knows when you're ever ready? I don't know. When we're ready to have kids, it's like you don't really like. I don't know if anybody ever arrives, because your business is going to be ugly. Like our business is ugly now. Like, I mean, it's beautiful in a lot of ways, but like there's some ugly parts of it, and that's the reality.
yeah, no, that's fair. And well, Daniel, really appreciate this time with you today. Where can our followers, sign up for Trust and Will if they need to do their own estate planning, and how can they follow you?
Yeah, trustandwill.com. Really direct. Go there, get your estate plan. It takes 20 minutes. If you're a founder, you definitely need one. And then me, I don't know. I'm on Twitter a little bit, Goldstein222. We are Trust and Will's on Twitter. My co-founder is a little more active on Twitter if you want to look at tech stuff. Cody Barbo.
Oh, awesome. Well, appreciate the time today. Appreciate the insights, and really glad to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jason.